Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the St. Helena Unified School District. I'm Maria Haug, Board President, and I would like to introduce my fellow trustees, Lisa Pelosi, Julio Oguin, Jeannie Kerr, and Forrest Minter. I would also like to introduce our student representative to the board, Ms. Macy Alvarez. I would like to introduce our district staff, Superintendent Dr. Mary Lou Wilson, Chief Academic Human Resource Officer Mr. Christopher Heller, Chief Business Official Ms. Andy Stubbs, Executive Assistant to the Governing Board and Superintendent Ms. Erica Madrigal, and Executive Assistant to the Chief Academic Officer Ms. Melissa Hansen. Our IT Systems Analyst Mr. Derek Machado is working in the back room. Thank you, Derek. The additional site administrators who are joining us in the audience and district administrators, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Mary Allen, District Social Worker and Community Liaison, Ms. Roxana Plancarte, St. Helena Primary School Principal, Ms. Rebecca Rocha, St. Helena Elementary School Principal, Ms. Tanya Pearson, Robert Louis Stevenson Middle School Principal, Ms. Karen Cox, St. Helena High School Principal, Mr. Ben Cinto. Did I miss anyone? We are also delighted that you are joining us in person or viewing us on Channel 27 or our YouTube channel. A copy of the board meeting will also be available on our district website at www.sthelena.unified.org. In connection with item B, on closed session, the board met with the superintendent to discuss evaluation goals for the superintendent's annual evaluation for the 2020-2021 school year. In connection with closed session item A, the board considered the administration's recommendation to expel one student. If the student complies with the provisions of the expulsion and rehabilitation plan, the student may receive consideration to re-enroll in the St. Helena Unified School District in January of 2022. I will accept a motion to expel student number 3042 as specified in the stipulation. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 6A is public comment on items not on the agenda. Public comment on at board meetings. At this time, members of the public are entitled to speak on matters not on the agenda. You are requested to state your name, address, and keep your comments concise, brief, and limited to 3 minutes. The instructions are above. Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on items that are not on the agenda? Please step forward and state your name. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. Boy. All right. My name is Mazzie Jones. I'm a senior here at St. Helena High School. I'm the president of the high school's environmental club, and I'm a woman with a vision. I'm here today to ask a big favor on behalf of the Earth to put the St. Helena Unified School District on solar power. I'm aware that the board has considered the switch to solar several times in the past, as far back as 2016, and that the idea was tabled due to unfavorable financial circumstances, which were mainly impacted by tariffs imposed by the government on solar panel materials. In 2018, you checked back in on the proposition, but tariffs and tax reforms stood in the way. And then came COVID. And so now we're here in 2021, still a very financially comfortable school district, slowly but surely working our way past COVID and chipping away at tariff barriers. I'm here tonight to add the momentum that this project needs to get rolling. A district-wide solar project may sound like a huge or daunting project, but you may be relieved to know that most of the research and planning was done in 2016. I've been given some packets by the generous and wonderful Andy Stubbs, which contain complete and tedious plans for solar panels at each school campus in the district. There are also summaries of our energy usage, positive environmental impact, and possible savings, as well as soft costs and risks associated with the project. All we would need is a new survey of some of the outdated information and a little bit of budgeting. As we all know, not only does solar power save homes and businesses thousands to tens of thousands of dollars each year on energy bills, but it's a much more sustainable source of power than your average power produced by the burning of fossil fuels, which is, one of the main and worst contributors to global warming. And the constant depletion of our fossil fuel resources has and will continue to increase energy prices over the years, so it's beneficial in that aspect. As climate change worsens over the next few decades, we'll all have to adapt to newer, more sustainable and regenerative ways of life. My suggestion is that we approach these changes in a thoughtful and proactive way, and that we set an example in our community by doing what hundreds of schools across California have done, making the switch to solar energy. There's what's called a legacy load of CO2 in the atmosphere, which makes the earth warmer and causes natural disasters each day. This legacy load is one that my generation will have to carry. If the purpose of school is to make our future brighter, then reducing this district's contribution of CO2 to the atmosphere is a truly meaningful way to a healthier future for us students. I appreciate and applaud that this board is very environmentally conscious, and that's why I hope that myself and the 40 some odd members of the environmental club can work together with you on going solar. I think of this board as fertile ground for me to plant my seed of suggestion, and just maybe with a little sunlight, something beautiful can bloom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We always appreciate the student voice. For items that are not on the agenda and where there is public comment, I would like to remind our audience that the board may not comment on or discuss anything that is mentioned that is not on the agenda. But I want to thank you for your speech to us. Then do we have another? Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Hello, my name is Sandra Sheffield. I'm a parent and a community volunteer. And I am here today because I take my kids to Enwin Plaza, and the transportation lately has been terrible and unreliable, and that's a problem. It's not only my kids, 2 of them, but it's also the other kids. A coworker, someone that I work with, is also having problems. And the other parents, I know some of them, and just this unreliable transportation is causing us, problems. I get 5 minutes to leave work to drop off my kids at the Enwin Plaza, but then when we don't have a bus running, I have to come all the way to St. Helena, and I could lose my job. So that's not good for me or my family. So I'm here to let you know what's happening, and we are really being affected, and it's just sad that the great city of St. Helena cannot have reliable transportation for the kids. So hopefully I can get some help, not only for my kids, but for all the kids in Enwin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. I would like to thank all our speakers for speaking during for their comments on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Okay, next we have our presentation from our student representative to the board. Ms. Alvarez, please Go ahead.
So this is my first student representative report. I met with all these lovely principals to discuss what is going on at the schools. So at St. Helena High School, which I obviously attend, ASB is currently working on our student congress, which is incorporating our ASB officers to meet. Oh, my microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Is this good? Okay, I can't even tell. Okay. So ASB is working on Student Congress, which is the Associated Student Body of St. Helena High School connecting with other fourth period classmates, and we discuss items that we would like to see addressed and tinkered at St. Helena High School. And it reads, this is our mission as Student Congress. The St. Helena High School Student Congress is a formal student-run body that gives students the opportunity to grapple with and resolve student climate issues, affirming the belief that students should have a vested interest in their own education and school community. Mr. Cinto, our principal, is currently working with City Council to put together a student liaison as well, so the student voice can be more recognized in regards to what's going on in the city of St. Helena, which is really awesome, especially for leadership students, and how they can encourage other students to get involved in student liaison. And Leadership and Student Congress will work together to highlight monthly initiatives through activities and demonstrations. For example, Hispanic Heritage Month. Just yesterday, we had a really awesome ballet folklorico in the quad, and students really enjoyed that, took advantage of it. So me and Mr. Cinto and I talked about trying to further that kind of activity monthly to highlight the initiatives. And then the RLS sports are back in swing. So at the moment we have co-ed soccer and girls basketball going on, and a few students began a wrestling club. However, wrestling is not a sport that they can participate in due to COVID. So it's more of a fitness focused club, just talking about how you can stay healthy and fit. And they are also having student body elections, which is they're super excited for. Campaigning began the day that I visited the RLS on September 2nd, and they're having a lot of fun making posters and promoting their goals as representatives at the RLS. And another student representative program at the RLS is the WEB program, which is where the 8th grade leaders at the RLS begin introducing the 6th graders back to campus, which was something that hasn't happened in the last couple years because of COVID. So that was super exciting for the 8th grade leaders and the 6th grade students to be able to connect on their first few days of school. And then here's an image. Me and Mrs. Cox went to an 7th grade classroom, Mr. Sasser's 7th grade history, and they were doing a very elaborate activity about the Roman Empire, and it was a lot of fun to see the students trading their coins, and Mr. Sasser's wearing a Roman helmet. It was really fun to watch. And then at St. Helena Elementary School, there are new lunch areas outdoors for the elementary students to engage with their classmates. I'll show you in the next page. There's an image on the left where there are tents, so they're shaded during lunch, and each table has their class labeled so they can stay aligned with their classmates. And a lot of the elementary school students are very interested in a cleanup crew. So after they finish eating their lunch, they are engaging in keeping their tables clean, cleaning up their trash, wiping the tables, which is really nice to know, especially for a safe and healthy environment, kind of like Mazzy's initiative, just making sure that we're keeping our lunch areas as cleanly as possible. Students are aware of COVID-19 as well, as Mrs. Pearson highlighted. They are not required to wear their mask while playing outside. However, a lot of students are keeping them on, which is really nice to see that young elementary school children are aware of that. And specials classes are back, such as PE, music, which is really exciting for the students as well, because that was something that wasn't as available last year due to COVID restrictions. And then there's a new bike club, which is increasing student equity along the boards of elementary school students who may not be able to ride a bike to school or may not have a bike at home. So everyone is able to engage in staying active on a bike if they would like to. And then, so on the left again is our lunch area, and on the right, there's a group of 5th graders playing on the playground during their recess time. And then at the primary school,
kindergarten teachers are beginning to join the second grade classrooms to enrich reading skills. The current second graders will benefit from the additional support, as the school closures may have affected some of their remote learning during kindergarten and first grade. So the second grade teachers are there to help support both the kindergarten the kindergarten teachers are there to help, the second graders and the second grade teachers in helping lift them up during their first full school year. And then in the next slide, I will show an image of the second graders painting calendars for the school year. Every year they make calendars with art on different pages. They use different types of paint, different types of media, and they were drawing their own outlines. And as I was watching the students, you can really tell they were trying to help each other out, problem solve, based on, they didn't think their lines were straight or they messed up paint colors, but they helped each other, which was really nice to see. And so on the left, you can see this boy drew a goldfish, and he has a lot of blue marker on his hand. But he was having a lot of fun. It was really cute to see him messing with his markers. And then on the right, there's a young girl who was having trouble because she was painting, and she was only supposed to use 4 blue squares, but she did 5 on accident. But she shouted, "I solved my problem," when she just painted the other half red, which was really, really cute. Her classmates were very excited to know she solved her problem. And then I went into a second grade classroom, and a young girl handed this to me and was like, "This is for you." And I'm like, "Oh, what is this?" And she was like, "It's you." So she painted me a little picture, which I thought was really adorable. Exactly, I know, it's beautiful. So that is a conclusion of my board report. If anyone has any questions or comments, I'm welcome to answer those. Thank you.
And President Haug, I believe Macy has a volleyball match this evening, and so she'll be excusing herself rather early. Thank you, Macy.
Okay, thank you, Macy, and good luck at the game.
Thank you.
Next, I will go on to board member reports. I'd like to call on the Trustee Pelosi.
As always, it's terrible to follow students. And I didn't get a portrait when I went to the primary school, so now I'm really feeling slighted. I had the good fortune to spend some time Monday afternoon with Principal Rocha, and Dr. Wilson joined us as well. And it was great to see everybody back in the classrooms, and the classrooms are bright and vivid and engaging, and lots of great stuff on the walls, and the kids are masked up and engaged with their teachers. I will say that I went to a kindergarten class, first grade class, second grade class, and then we sat in briefly on 2 math intervention sessions for some students, and the pictures will kind of show you. I'll go a little bit with the pictures when they come up, but I know that there was much discussion about our class sizes at the primary school this year, but I was reassured that our class sizes are working for our staff and they're working for our students. And it's allowing teachers the ability to be very engaged and connected to our students and to get to know them, on a really deep level. So as they follow up on or continue with a COVID type of year, they are better able to address their instruction and feel, and get a good sense of where interventions may be needed. And I think that the class sizes this year is allowing that to happen. This is right outside the office, this calm down corridor. If you remember, they had the calm down kits. So Principal Rocha explained that nobody needed to use that as of yet, and that it would probably be good for both students and adults. So if you find yourself by the primary and feel a little stressed, feel free to do the exercises. Let's see the next one, please. Again, like Macy showed for the elementary school, this is at the primary school. Just wanted to show you that they as well had an outdoor area shaded for distance to be outside for lunch, eating, and whatnot. Okay, and I think the next one, you'll see this was the first grade class. And, you know, look at them just sitting there listening and learning. And this was great because they were talking about citizens in their community. And the focus that day happened to be on principals and what amazing citizens they are. And then lo and behold, who walked through the door but the principal. So it was very exciting to see them writing about principals and how they serve their community. And the next slide will be Mrs. Ivanoff's, this is a math intervention out of, I do believe, Miss Ronane's class, that these are students that have been identified that need a little extra support in math. So Mrs. Ivanoff gets to meet them daily to work on skills, as you can see on the back on her Promethean board, about value placement of math, of the numbers. So that was great. We're very fortunate that we are able to offer that. And we also went in briefly to Miss O'Connor was also doing a math intervention with 2 students. Same kind of work was happening with working with place values of ones, tens, and hundreds. So those students are lucky to be identified and get the additional support that they need. So thank you as always for having me. I, love our little primary school. That's it for tonight. Unless you have any questions, if
Thank you,
anybody.
Lisa. Board members, do we have any questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa. On to the subcommittee reports, the superintendent subcommittees. Board policies, Trustee Olguin and Trustee Pelosi, we're going to be addressing those later in the meeting as an agenda item. Do you feel the need to add anything from the policy meeting?
I'd actually like to review each one. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just wanted to say that I did want to let the community know that these policies are constantly being revised by our district staff. And so they take a lot of time to do that and basically dumb it down for board members so that we get to our meeting and then we can understand what they're doing. So I did want to just say thank you to those individuals that work on those policies and bring them to our committee.
And just because we do have a student in the audience, we do have a lot of policies that directly affect students tonight. So if you're interested to listen, it might be a very interesting experience. So on to business operations. Forrest, you're the only trustee that was in attendance. Would you like to report out on business operations to us?
So I'm kind of drawing a blank. Let me pull up my notes.
We can go to the LCAP first, we can come back to you, Forrest. Thank you. Lisa or Jeannie, did you decide?
Allow Trustee Kerr to start.
Okay. Trustee Kerr, please start.
We had our first LCAP meeting on and it's actually called the St. Helena Unified School District LCAP Steering Committee. And it was, the first one was on Tuesday, and it was a hybrid. So it was either, with all of the subcommittees, I believe it's either going to be, you could do either virtual or in person. I actually was on the in-person side, and wow, what a change it is from being virtual into the in person. It feels good. It actually feels really good to be in person in those meetings. However, the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I told you guys is that we, as you know, we have the different strands, 4 different strands, or actually we've got 5 different strands. But this year's the LCAP steering committee is going to be focused in on wellness, just because that's going to be one of our priorities. And as you know, we've been talking about wellness for all of our employees and all of our students for a year now, and been really making it a priority this year. So we started with just an introduction of the members, and then we reviewed the district priorities and our district budget. Mr. Heller shared information about the LCAP, which is something that we approved in June, and it's a 3-year LCAP, as you know. We then talked about engagement, kind of what we're planning on as far as the like student engagement and parent engagement and getting information from them, you know, it's like our listening circles and things, and kind of what we wanted to do this year. So we discussed that a bit, and that's still kind of to be determined. And then we, Andy Stubbs, Ms. Stubbs also showed us the expenditure plan for the ESSER 3, which is another round of the American Rescue Plan, you know, the federal money. And so when she's put together a budget, she asked us to review the budget and to ask for any kind of changes or anything. That'll come one more time to this committee, to the LCAP, and it'll come to us in the October 21st board meeting. And Trustee Pelosi, did I miss anything?
No, I think it's, you know, as everybody knows, that the LCAP is what drives the district in its work. And I think that with our district priorities, you know, one of the things that you just briefly talked about it, but we obviously have an equity priority as well. And so Mr. Cinto provided the update on that. And there's a lot of great work going on around that. He gave us an update on the call to action, you know, engaging the teachers and students and the alumni from the school district. That is still ongoing. The youth initiative, which sounds great. The city is looking to select 2 high school seniors to serve as liaisons. You know, just trying to kind of keep working on the diversity aspect. And that the dual enrollment is definitely more representative of diversity this year, but there's obviously continuing to work on that. So, as always, for all a multitude of watchers this evening, please know that we're still looking for people to join our committee, parents and whatnot. We'd love to have you to have additional voices. So if anybody out there would like to be a part of the LCAP steering committee, we would love to have you join us. So contact the district office, please.
And Dr. Wilson, these subcommittees are also open to students as well, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Forrest, do you have the business operations?
Yeah, so
No?
we spent some time talking about the pool and discussing the logistics of it to some extent. We also spent time talking about the field at the RLS and the whether or not to replace it with turf. I believe we decided that needed more discussion because of the cost. And I think those are the major points that we addressed.
Thank you, Forrest. On to the SHTA report to the board. Brandon, do you have anything for us this evening? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, or good evening. I'm a little lost right now, so. I would say through the last month, we've started all of our committees, as we've already talked about, and our staff is pretty excited that, including in all the student wellness, we're really focusing a little bit more on also staff wellness, which I think is much appreciated. I would say also along with that, one of the things that some of my staff members talk about is really trying to focus on targeted goals and trying to focus rather than try to overarching topics and trying to hit large ranging topics, and try to, instead of doing that, focus a little bit more on targeted goals that we can set achievement, we can start looking at achievement of those goals too. So it's one of the things that I know Mr. Cinto and I are working on with the SEL program through physical education. So we're going to be working on a lot of things with that in terms of students, but I also think we should transition the same kind of ideas into the staff wellness, focus a lot on very direct goals so we can see what outcomes we can get. it is really nice to hear all these committees getting back going in person, whether some of them are in person, some are in hybrid meetings now, and some of them just happen better in Zoom. And most of the committees that I've been on have been talking about, what suits every member on there. I think that's good. I do feel like we are a little bit behind on getting some of our teaching staff into those committees. Some of them haven't started yet, and Mr. Heller and I are talking about those. But in the same token, if we can continue that, broad way we're going to be doing those meetings, I think that will help get our teachers involved a little bit more too. But I think we are a little bit behind on getting some of the teachers involved, mainly because it's like a new school year. For a lot of us, we went last year into like a first year teacher mode, and now we're kind of in a first year teacher mode in reverse. So it's been a big year so far, getting back to the regular bell schedule for students and for staff. So I think that's part of the reason we haven't seen as much teacher buy-in to those committees yet. So we'll work on that. I think that's something I want to focus on in the next month. I do appreciate at the younger levels the specials. I went and talked to Mr. Binder at the elementary school and saw some great things in music and some kids smiling, and they do a nice job in the specials right now of reporting back to the homeroom teacher, or the classroom teacher. I guess it's not homeroom. Some of the good things that they're doing in each of those classes. So I think they're getting some direct feedback into the classrooms through those things. I was telling Mr. Heller that, and I think that's a great idea. And I think that's happening throughout the whole specials group. But it's really nice to have that group of teachers working on what they were hired to do originally, because that also gives some of my members some prep time. So I know that is, it's a luxury to have. So we appreciate that. At the high school and the middle school, it's somewhat business as usual. We have a lot of the same things going on that would look like in a normal school year, just with students with masks. So I credit all the teachers and the principal staffs and the office staffs for really transitioning into a nice school year for the last month. And believe it or not, it's like almost a quarter done. So I don't, we're moving very quickly, and it'll just move a lot more quickly even through October. So hopefully we can report a little bit different participation next month, and I'll try to focus on that a little bit and get some more teacher voices as well.
Thank you, Brandon. Brandon, can I just ask, is it a question of the timing of the meetings, or is
No,
it just?
It's really the beginning of a school year that's coming off of a wonky school year. And I, to be honest with you, though, there are several teachers that are very aware that the rules are very vague. And last year, the vagueness of the rules somewhat worked for us to go back to school, and then the vagueness of the rules right now are causing a lot of concern about how to maneuver through all those guidelines and rules, Maria. So I think I can't say for any one person, but I think that sentiment is out there. People are tired. I don't know what else to tell you, but people are tired and they want to go home after they spend all day here. So.
Okay, thank you, Brandon, for sharing. Did anyone have any other questions for the SHTA? And then the CSCA report is a written report. Thank you, Ms. Avina. I'd like to move on now to the superintendent's report, and I'd like to call on Dr. Wilson.
Good evening again. I want to remind the community that the District of Choice application window opened in September and will remain open until November 30th. It is on the screen right now, the website, and if you scroll down just a bit, you'll find the graphic and all of the information with regards to District of Choice transfer applications there in the center of the screen. So again, that window is open until November 30th, and this is potential enrollment for the 22-23 school year. Recently, staff created a video for our parents around COVID testing for students. And I encourage parents, if they have not had a chance to watch that video, to watch that video. With the updated California Public Health guidance, students who are exposed and not showing any symptoms, we are able to maintain them in classrooms under what's called a modified quarantine. So what that means is if parents give us permission to test them twice a week for 10 days, they will stay in school. If the parents will not give that permission, and they may choose not to, then the students will need to stay home for 10 days. This is a bit of a game changer for us, as it does allow us to keep our children in school more days, especially given the fact that we are not, the remote learning option is not available to us any longer by state officials. So that testing protocol did start this week, and I would encourage again parents who have not signed their children up for permission to have that occur, watch the video, understand the self-swabbing process, and sign your children up so that we can test them if they are exposed. The one caveat to that modified quarantine is that while they can be in school, they cannot participate in extracurriculars, whether that's athletics or drama or the Boys and Girls Club. They do need to go home immediately following school. I have really exciting news for the community of St. Helena. Thanks to our new school nurse, Kate Scudero, and our incredibly brilliant negotiator, Andy Stubbs, we are in the process of beginning a COVID testing site here in the front parking lot of Rotary Park 3 days a week in the mornings. For those of you who don't know, obtaining a COVID test right now is very difficult, especially in the area of St. Helena. Napa, the city of Napa has many public health sites, lots of drive-throughs. Calistoga has public health once a week. There are no options for parents and community members in St. Helena. Some can go to St. Helena Hospital, and that's by doctor referral only. So we are working with N3 Labs, and they will house themselves 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning. You can register through a link. This is primarily we worked diligently to have this so that our families could have students with symptoms tested more quickly and get back into school if they don't have COVID. They are also opening it to the entire community. So anyone can register and have a COVID test Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning. So thank you to our staff for jumping on that one and finding a way to make it happen. And remind our community also that our staff continue, many of our staff are vaccinated. They don't need to be tested, and we do continue to offer testing for our staff on a weekly basis in the event that they want to be tested or are required to be tested. Following my report are the principal's reports, and I wanted to bring your attention to the shift in those reports. They are now aligned with the 5 district priorities or goals that Trustee Pelosi and Kerr talked about. And so each of the reports has something that's happening at the school under each of the goals. And I do encourage people to read these because there's a lot of interesting information that tells you what's happening at every one of our schools on a monthly basis. And then finally, it's with sadness that I bring forward to you a notification that we did receive resignation from Trustee Minter. His last day with us as a trustee is tomorrow, Friday. And while he's been with us a short time, he did jump in. He learned a lot during COVID, virtually and in lots of meetings, and brought value to the board. And so on behalf of staff, I'd like to say thank you, Forrest, for your time and commitment to our district. And President Haug, would you like to say a few words to Forrest as well? And that will conclude my report when you have finished.
Yes, Forrest, on behalf of the board, I would like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We all know how much work this job is. You put in a lot of hours. You did all of the training that, days of training that it takes for a new board member to get up to speed. And it was just really a pleasure to have your insight, your comments as a recent graduate, your thoughtful perception of situations, and giving us a different viewpoint. It was always appreciated. I'd like to present you with a few little things on behalf of the board and then the district, and then I'd like to give my fellow trustees a little time to say thank you as well. First of all, Forrest, we do have the obligatory Saints magnet for your car, because I know with your job, it's a very visible marker. We have a Saints hat for you, as well as 2 Saints t-shirts and a bag, and then a letter that is signed by all the board members.
And you need to wear it all at once.
Thank you, Forrest. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you.
Yeah. Forrest, I mean, obviously, I will ditto most of what President Haug said, and I just. It always needs to be commended when anybody gives their time in public service, short or long time. So, that takes a unique individual to want to do that. So I want to thank you and commend you for possessing that characteristic to give your time to the greater good. And, you know where we are if you want to stay involved in some kind of way, shape, or form. We'd love to have your voice. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I want to echo the same sentiment. Obviously, you brought a different perspective, and I think that was important to our board, just to get your voice on our board. And again, I appreciate all the time and effort that you did take, and especially during such a challenging time. Yeah. I know it's hard to be a new board member and be learning on the fly, and then on top of that, with all the additional things that were going on, and you definitely were a key part of the decision making, and so I want to say thank you.
Forrest, I echo everyone. That's what's nice about being last, is you don't really know. But I really do know. But yes, I mean, you stepped in at a time where where a lot of people didn't want to step in. So I really commend you on that. And I think that the time that you have given to our district, I thank you very much for that. And your perspective is great, and just the things that you were able to you were able to give us a different view on different things as well. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, and the best of luck to you and your wife. The best of luck.
Absolutely.
And one last comment. I'm just going to let the community know that Forrest is moving to a district next door, and we hope that he is active in education in his new home. And we have nothing but good wishes for you. Thank you, Forrest. Would you like to say a word or no? Okay. Well, thank you, Forrest. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Forrest.
President Haug, one clarifying question for Dr. Wilson, if I could, on Dr. Wilson, with the N3 labs testing coming, is that in addition to the weekly staff testing, or would that replace?
At this time, it's in addition to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It is during the morning when staff is working, and so it wouldn't be available.
It was during work hours, so. Thank you.
I have another question around the testing. Is that just open to the St. Helena community, or is it surrounding community, or is there gonna?
I believe anyone that registers for the testing at the N3 lab, Ms. Stubbs, could participate in the testing.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So on to item 9, we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains routine items judged as appropriate to be acted upon in one motion. If a board member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, the item will be considered under discussion action items. Board members, do we wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on the consent agenda? Trustees, do you have any questions? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, item 9, as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. So, board-related items. We have item 10A, which would be considering the filling of the vacancy of the governing board due to Forrest trustee member Forrest Minter's resignation. Dr. Mary Lou Wilson, I'd like to call on you.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, Forrest Minter is resigning his position effective September 17th, which is tomorrow. And according to Ed Code 5091, you have 60 days from that date to fill that vacancy, or an order of an election will occur. If you are able to, if you're not able to fill the vacancy with a provisional appointment, the county superintendent of schools, Dr. Nemko, would indicate that you need to hold an election. You do have two choices with that provisional appointment. It could be an election, a special election, or you could go through the appointment process. And in my years with you as a governing board, we have gone through that process a number of times. And in fact, some of you have come onto the board through the appointment process. The board, all of your positions are elected positions. An appointment process in the middle of the election cycle is a way to fill the seat, meet the requirements of Ed Code, and allow the district to stay away from some exorbitant costs for a special election. A special election could cost anywhere from $25,000 to more. So, in the board agenda item, you will find the CSBA packet that tells us how to go about filling a board vacancy. And so Erica Madrigal and I have used that to develop a potential plan for you. You also have a potential timeline. So I am recommending that you approve the appointment process as opposed to a special election. And with that process, I'm suggesting the timeline that is on the screen right now. So if beginning Monday of next week, the applications would be available either online or through Erica Madrigal in my office here at Vintage Hall. Those applications would be due by October 11th. And 2 of you would need to be selected to review those applications. You are not reviewing them to determine who is the candidate or a better candidate. You are only reviewing them to ensure that they are registered to vote, they're 18 or older, and they live in our attendance area. And Erica and I will help you with that by looking at addresses and doing a search for you. And then that would happen on the 12th. On Wednesday, October 13th, the packets from all candidates would be posted on the website, so our community has an opportunity to view them publicly. And then we would recommend a special meeting on Thursday, October 14th, where the sole agenda item would be the interviewing and selecting potentially of a candidate to fill the vacancy. That process, we'll go into more details in that process at a later time. And then on October 21st, our next regularly scheduled board meeting, we would swear that board member in during the regular meeting, and they would become an effective board member October 21st, rather, I'm sorry. So again, you could go with a special election if you chose. There would be a cost for that special election, and if you go that route, Eric and I will work with John Tudor to make that happen for you. And as I said, I do recommend that appointment process and would recommend that you approve that this evening, along with the timeline as written.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, I'd like to open our discussion up of this agenda item, whether I first would like to see if anyone is interested in holding a special election that would cost most likely in excess of $25,000 to the district.
Not.
Me either.
I am also not in favor of that option, so it is unanimous that we wish to go forward with the appointment process.
And we'll look for a motion and
Well,
we'll
yes,
ask
I
you to
know,
vote.
and then-
And Trustee Minter, you are still an active member, and so you will be voting as well.
And then the other question that I do have, because we need to also discuss who will be the two board members who will be interested in serving as
To review the
review
applications,
the
yes.
applications. So what we'll be looking at next is we're going to be asking for two board members to volunteer for the October 12th special meeting date.
And President
That's
Haug,
the paper screening.
yeah,
It's not really a meeting.
It's a special, no, it's a special paper screening. It's
it's a meeting in my office.
a meeting. It's not a board.
an agenda.
It's not an
No.
agendized board meeting. It's two board members meeting with Dr. Wilson,
Okay.
to clarify.
And President Haug, the motion is to approve the attached procedure
Yeah.
and also appoint a subcommittee of two. So if you do that
So
whole
we do the-
motion at
We
once,
do the first motion first and then appoint the subcommittee after. Is that what you're saying?
the motion involves both aspects that you're going to create a subcommittee. So you're going to approve that motion, and then after that, you'll find the two people who will fill.
I see.
That
Okay,
will not
all right.
require a vote. That's just a volunteer.
I see. Okay. So now, actually, I am looking for a motion to approve the entire procedure to fill the vacancy and to hold the appointment process.
Before we approve, can I just clarify
Yes,
something?
yes,
For the
of course.
community and potential board members? They would, if they're appointed, they would fulfill Trustee Mentor's time served, which is, we should probably let them know.
Yes,
that their
so
work-
this would be for the remainder of the term, which goes until December of 2024. This is a real-time commitment. It is for over 3 years. And then,
I'd just like to warn anyone who's interested, the first year is going to be a lot of time commitment.
yeah, it is a lot of time commitment. We can give a little more information. There is a small stipend that goes along with the position, which is, Trustee Kerr and I looked it up. I believe it's $231 a month, which I guess roughly some months it can work into about 43 cents an hour for the time. All joking aside, it's a stipend that does not reflect the time and commitment that goes into the job.
And
The medical's nice, though.
again, too, it is a commitment, but I think.
Right.
Very
the ti-
rewarding.
It's passion, yeah.
It's very
If you're
rewarding.
passionate about education, it goes by quickly as well, so.
It is a very rewarding job. It's a very rewarding undertaking. And although it can be challenging, I think that anything that is truly rewarding is also challenging.
Do we have a plan of how to get the word out?
Well, first of all, it's this meeting here.
No, I understand that, but
And then,
you know, there's a
yes.
we're bigger than the people that are just here and
so,
watching.
In preparation for this possible vote that we might have, I have prepared a video statement that will be sent to all school families.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay,
So,
I'll make that motion.
okay. Trustee Pelosi has made a motion to approve the appointment process as outlined. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now I am looking for the 2 volunteers. I'm sorry if there was confusion before on my part. I didn't realize, I was assuming that I had to have the volunteers before the motion.
I'm happy to volunteer for that.
It's October 12th. It's Tuesday, October 12th. And I believe that you could work it out, a time frame.
Correct. We'll work a time that will work for both of you.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll do it.
So it'll be Trustee Pelosi and Trustee Olguin will be our screeners. Thank you both. So next we have adoption of Resolution 21-10 against bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence. Is there, I'd like to call on Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
Yes, I'm pleased and proud to continue to bring this annual resolution to the board. Our district our staff works diligently to create a safe and nurturing environment for all of our students. They're working on anti-bullying every day of every week, and we highlight it during the month of October. Macy was going to read this for us prior to her needing to leave for her match. So, President Haug, I'm trusting that you will engage one of your trustees to read this resolution for us, and I recommend approval.
Forrest, since it's your last day with us, would you be happy to read the Resolution 21-10 of the St. Helena Unified School District against bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence?
Sure.
Thank you, Forrest.
Whereas St. Helena Unified School District supports the right of students and staff to attend schools that are safe and free from bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence, and whereas providing a safe school environment that ensures both the physical and emotional safety of students and staff creates the conditions necessary to foster academic achievement, and whereas bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence, and even the fear of harm can create barriers to learning and contribute to low self-esteem, depression, anger, and in extreme cases, school violence or suicide. And whereas a safe school is one where teaching and learning are not distracted, disruptions are minimized, drugs, violence, bullying, and fear are not present, students are not discriminated against, exceptions for behavior are clearly communicated, and consequences for infractions are consistently and fairly applied. And whereas the most effective approach to creating safe school environments requires a comprehensive, coordinated effort, including school-wide, district-wide, and community-wide strategies where all institutions, organizations, and individuals accept responsibility for their critical roles and collaborate to establish a positive environment for teaching and learning. And whereas the month of October is National Bullying Prevention Month, which is a campaign in response to the need to raise awareness of bullying that provides schools and communities with an opportunity to educate students, parents, and others about their role in bullying prevention. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the St. Helena Unified School District hereby support the goals of National Bullying Prevention Month, and it will work with a broad spectrum of loyal community stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, and staff to develop, implement, and monitor policies and programs that foster and support a positive school climate free from bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence.
Thank you, Trustee Mentor. Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Trustees, any comments or questions? No. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 21-10 against bullying, harassment, discrimination, and violence as read by Forrest?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Next, we have a public hearing on Board Policy 6158, Independent Study. I'd like to call on Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
Miss Allen, will you come to the podium as well, please? Thank you. In our last board meeting, we brought forward to you that our students who were not prepared to come to in-person instruction would be offered an independent study program through Napa Unified School District. And I think I shared with you approximately, we thought at the time it would be 6 students, and it is in fact 6 students that are participating in that program, their independent study program that's been in place for numbers of years. In addition, we were required to update our independent study policy to reflect the new requirements within the California Department of Education. And so Ms. Allen worked diligently to make sure that our policy was updated. And one of the aspects of the legal requirements is that there's a public hearing. So I'm going to ask Ms. Allen to share with you the major changes within that policy and then recommend, following the public hearing, approval of the policy. Ms. Allen?
So the policy has to do with Assembly Bill 130, and I think you have some of the changes in front of you. I don't have that on the internet, so if you guys, thank you. So in reference to independent study, last year we were under another Assembly bill, Senate Bill 98, and it had to deal with distance learning, to where we had to provide asynchronous, synchronous instruction within the school day, and we did a very good job on that. That sunsetted on June 30th, 2021. What came in its place was the opportunity for school districts to do independent study. We had to do independent study. Everything that was in distance learning flipped over to the independent study mode. And we were fortunate enough to have a contract developed with Napa Valley Unified for our families that selected to do independent study. And as Dr. Wilson told you, we have 6 students. We have 4 from the high school, 1 from the middle school, and 1 from the elementary school in the independent study with Napa Valley Unified. Again, they're welcome to come back at any time. One of the major changes on this particular policy is that should they choose to come back to our district, they have 5 days. We have to make that happen within 5 days to come back to our school district for the independent study. And so far, I think Napa Valley's been doing a great job, and our students are getting enrolled. I think we have 5 of them enrolled. One's going to be enrolled by next Monday. So it's happening, and it's there. And we're excited about it. And that's the major change with the independent study. As far as short-term independent study that we do within the district, that's still here.
And credit recovery at the high school with Apex is still in place for students who are attending in person, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And forgive my error, President Haug. At this time, it's a public hearing only. The approval of this board policy would be with the other board policies later in the agenda.
I'm sorry, this is a different procedure. So the public hearing for Board Policy 6158, Independent Study, is now open at 7:02 p.m. Comments during this public hearing should be limited to Board Policy 6158, Independent Study. It is our goal to hear from all who wish to be heard. We now invite members of the audience to address the Board of Trustees on Board Policy 6158, Independent Study only. I do have to wait for at least 60 seconds. No, not 60 minutes. 60 seconds for anyone to come forward.
I was like, you can wait 60 minutes.
The public hearing is now closed at 7:04 p.m. Trustees, are there any questions regarding Board Policy 6158, Independent Study?
No.
I just have kind of a logistical question. So these students are students at Napa Valley Unified School District then right now, is that correct? So their ADA is at Napa Valley Unified, okay.
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, great, thank you, thank you. And then, but like you said, that they can come back 5 days, they request back, they're back here 5 days. in
That's
5 days.
correct. And before they even could go down to Napa Valley Unified, they met with the administrators, went through the contract of what it entailed for them to do that. They had to agree with it, sign off on it, and all of that can be reversed in 5 days.
Okay, great, thank you.
And these are students that we assume would possibly rejoin us at a later date, for the most part.
Absolutely.
Okay. So next, I'd like to move on to item 10D, information and approval of the revision of board policies. These are the August recommendations. I'd like to call on Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. On August 24th, the Board Policy Committee met to review potential changes to board policies. I would remind you that the Board Policy Committee is made up of Executive Cabinet, Director of Instruction, Curriculum and Instruction, Principal at the high school, and board members. This meeting is always led by Erica Madrigal, and we appreciate all the work she does to prepare us for these meetings. So there are a number of policies that are coming to you for approval. Much of the changes on many of them are required by law. And we thought that it would be important for you and the community to hear a little bit more about a couple of the policies. So Ms. Allen is going to talk to you about promotion and acceleration, and Mr. Cinto is going to talk to you about extracurricular and co-curricular activities and graduation requirements before we recommend approval of all policies.
Good evening, everybody, again. So I am dealing with Board Policy 5123, Promotion, Acceleration, or Retention. There's not a change to our policy that we've had for the district. We've always had this policy in place for a few years. What they're doing with Assembly Bill 104, which passed on July 1st, it came quickly. The Senate and the Assembly met and made a variety of bills, and Ben will be presenting on a few of the other one, which was AB 130. This one had to do, so it's not replacing our retention policy, it's adding supplemental criterion to it. And it's only for this school year, 21-22 only. And what they're putting in place is that we have the capability, a student who has had half of the year to where they have had a D or an F or not passing has a capability of being retained. They can request a meeting for a consultation for retention. The district has 10 days to respond after the consultation to determine whether that's in the best interest of the student for retention. I can tell you that our policy, we're not a district that retains. The research behind retention is not favorable. It's always better to move them up in grade and provide as many supports to bring them up to grade level as opposed to retaining. If we do retain, it would be more so at the lower grades in the primary school if we were going to retain. And every so often we do have one or two students that we do that with at the lower grades. So the change in this policy for this year only is that a parent can request retention and that we would have a meeting, consultation, and then make a decision. The other part of this policy, which has been a big one, and Mr. Cinto has done a great job with the high school staff of putting this out there to the parents, is the capability for last year and this year for high schoolers, 9th through 12th grade, to change any D or F to a pass, no pass grade. And this would not impact their GPA, but they can certainly request it. The community, not the community, but the state colleges have been highly recommended to accept those pass and no pass without any repercussions for the students. The UC will look at that, but we can't guarantee. So what we're looking at on that one is they had 15 days to submit. The application was online. Parents had 15 days to submit, pass, no pass. And I can say that Ms. Linder and Mr. Garrity met with quite a few parents to discuss this. And what they're coming up is that they have about 20 families that have requested this. That's it. And they had 15 days to do this. However, Mr. Cinta was just at a meeting this week, and they might extend that 15 days for some other parents to go ahead and put the pass, no pass. But when Ms. Linder as well as Mr. Garrity meet with them, they do have a long discussion on pros and cons of doing the pass, no pass. And that's this one.
Which one? Okay, this, as you can see, is a admin reg, so it's not needing for approval, but I just thought it's something that we should highlight here today. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Mr. Farrell, actually, for helping prompt this along last year. If you remember, we changed the board policy associated with probation for extracurricular activities last year, but we had no official terms of what that actually, how that worked at the school site. I shared this with Ms. Cox as well, knowing they have an eligibility policy. But what you'll see here is a recognition. Well, first of all, it gives all ninth graders a clean slate. So the past practice used to be your eighth grade, what you came in with eighth grade determine your eligibility at that point in time. So everybody comes in a clean slate. And a few years ago, I think it's 3 years ago, Mr. Heller and I worked with Mr. Hoppy, and we authored a probationary period for ninth graders who wanted it. So this just does that automatically. But what this new policy does is it recognizes the value of connectedness up front rather than using it as a kind of like a token to have a student aspire to something. Which is really great because we know student connectedness really helps a student's academics. And lastly, it's this admin reg as it's written really still pays homage to the focus of our district, which is academics. So you'll see certain things in there about attending access period, if a student's ineligible, making sure they meet with their access mentor. You can't travel to away games if you're leaving before school lets out. So it really respects the academic environment while connecting that kid with an adult who's going to encourage them further. That's it. Yep. So the next one, and Mary's kind of really set this up, is about the graduation requirements. So we were ahead of our time with last year's alternate pathway to a diploma, which, if you recall, we implemented in our graduation requirements at the high school. And last year, just so you know, we had 3 students who benefited from that, and that was 180 credits. So you passed that last year. We implemented that right away before the state decided to do anything with that. So we were well ahead of our time. We have 1 student this year with regard to this board policy. So what this does is it allows us to offer a student the ability to meet the state graduation requirements, which was a surprise to us. Were 130 credits. We could graduate 3/4 of our school right now at 130 credits. Obviously, many of them haven't taken Gov and Econ. But for perspective, that's already been offered to 23 students this year. So that's a pretty significant number, and that kind of shows you the impact over the last year and a half. What I would say, though, is of those 23 students who were offered that allowance, roughly half of them would have met all our alternate pathway to a diploma anyway. And on a great note, a number of the students who were offered this allowance, even though they could have dropped 2, 3, or even 4 classes, not a single student dropped a class, to my knowledge. I know that was earlier on in my reporting, but a lot of the kids were happy with the courses that they were in and elected to stay in those courses, even though they didn't have to. And that is all I have.
Are there any, is there any public comment on any of the policy changes that we have been presented with tonight? And again, there are some others up there as well, the homework policy and others. Board members, any comments or questions?
You know, I don't have any question, but I would like to say thank you for coming up and sharing the kind of the meet with us as far as the policies and things, the things that we should be looking at. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to say that I think that the changes to the extracurricular and co-curricular activities, I feel that we've really hit on a good spot in that area. We've kind of looked at many different options over the years. I know that policy has changed several times since I've been here. And I think that this is recognizing our focus on student wellness, that the need for some students to be able to participate in those extracurricular activities, especially sports. We all know how physical activity really can help a lot of students in their attain their academic goals as well. So I'm really happy with the changes there. I think that goes in line with the board goals of student wellness. Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion and the motion would be to approve all the board policies board policy changes as presented, the revised board policies.
I'll make a motion to approve the revised board policies as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. On to student learning and achievement, item 11A, the local control, the LCAP. I'd like to call on Mr. Chris Heller.
Sure, good evening. This informational item is just shared with the governing board and the public to show minor grammatical and formatting changes recommended by NCOE after their review of the approved LCAP in July. There are no changes to goals or actions or any of the funding models supporting those goals or actions. It's just merely a opportunity for us to be transparent on showing the final LCAP with the NCOE recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Heller. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Board members, comments or questions?
No, I don't. No. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heller.
Item 11B, the local control accountability plan updated unduplicated pupil report. This is a written report. I'd like to remind everyone present, is there any public comment on this agenda item? Board members, questions or comments?
No, I thought it was a really user-friendly report to read and digest, so thank you for always doing that for us.
On to item 11C, the local control accountability plan update, the St. Helena High School report on equity and inclusion. I'd like to call on Mr. Bencinta.
That's a quick turnaround. I wasn't really ready for that one. All right. Hopefully everybody notices the little flirty touch in there. Thank you. All right, so brief little outline for our presentation. I'm going to cover the history of equity at St. Helena High School, recent developments, where we are going as tied to the LCAP, and then I'll field questions. So there was equity before there was equity. Obviously, equity is talked about a lot today. But at St. Helena High School, having been here for the last 13 years now, I could tell you it's been a long-standing practice at our school. I'm not going to go over all of these things here. They're in no sequential order, but I wanted to highlight a few of them. One of them being Operation Wraparound, the allocation of support services to the students who need it most, whether in directed studies, study skills, or independent study. Having 2 teachers, a paraprofessional, sometimes Mr. Joy, sometimes a district psychologist, sometimes our social worker now, Roxana Plancarte, has been wholly instrumental in elevating those students' achievement and feeling good about school. Some of the other things we have listed on here, which you have been directly involved in. If you remember a few years back, we had the College Readiness Block Grant, which allowed us to do a 10th grade field trip. We went to San Francisco State and UC Berkeley to do things like SAT and ACT prep and subsidize certain AP testing fees, as well as, well, I already said SAT and ACT prep, which are now wholly covered by our district, which is amazing. And what started out as 50% subsidy is now a full subsidy. One other thing I want to highlight on here really quickly is our Eld and Avid Mentorship. I'm really, really proud. I mean, Mr. Heller probably knows this very well. When you develop your master schedule, the first thing that you put on your board is generally the most important thing to you. So this year, in working over the summer with Ms. Linder and Mr. Garrity, we put up our Avid classes and our ELD classes all at the same time, first period, because it allows our Avid students to mentor our ELD students to do, they facilitate tutorials. And we're just getting that started this year. Obviously, we're only a month and a half in, but we are so excited. We started that a few years back. That was our master schedule last year, but with the 1st and 8th period swap, we were unable to facilitate that. So good stuff. Some of the things a little more historical on this list, and I look at Jeannie and Lisa and Maria having kids, and Forrest, you were probably a student at one of these times, is some of the things that we've changed over the years that I'm really proud of and I've never forgotten. We used to have a big disparity in our science offerings between agriculture science and our regular science program, and there were a lot of perceptions around rigor associated with those 2 programs, and we've melded the 2 of them. That's another thing on our master's schedule. I always afford our teachers between those 2 programs a collaboration period so that we can make sure that they're testing the same, they're working on the same topics. Another thing is, if you look at our master's schedule from 12 years ago to our master's schedule today, we have no non-college prep tracks in our master's schedule. And we had many of them back in the day, particularly in mathematics, history, and science and English, all of our core academic areas. There were many courses that were non-college prep. We don't have that anymore, barring one math course. The last one is that I'd like to highlight is the elimination of Honors English 9. And a lot of times people perceive that, how is that a nod to equity? But for those of us that had children during the school at that time, what happened every single year was we'd always start out with 2 sections of Honors English 9, and knowing we served many different communities, invariably over the course of the first semester, they would dwindle smaller and smaller and smaller. And what that did is that directly impacted the regular English 9 courses and made them bigger and made it more challenging for those teachers to adequately serve those students. So eliminating that put everybody in the same playing field, and was a really good opportunity for us to mix our student populations, whether coming from Pope Valley, Howell Mountain, Montessori, or RLS. It was a really good step into getting everybody off on the same footing. Some recent developments. And for those of you that were on the LCAP committee and the Equity, Culture, and Climate Committee, I think you heard a lot about these last year. I felt like a little bit of a broken record. And one highlight I want to do on here, and I know I've said this before, is really give a shout out to Mr. Sam Lucina, who attended 2 professional development sessions, enrolled in ethnic studies. Sorry, I should have prefaced that. And has already begun incorporating those themes within his instruction, talking about access to mental health services, access to nutrition, privilege and oppression, and rates of infection across various groups, and we're talking about physical health. I actually received a phone call yesterday, randomly out of the, or not yesterday, a couple weeks ago, from a principal in San Rafael who heard about what we were doing as a school and is petitioning her superintendent and her board to allow her to do some of the same things that we've done in freshman essentials in humanities. So where are we going? These are the 4 goals of our LCAP here, and although goal number 2 is a focus on equity, you can see equity in every single one of those goals. I heard from 2 of my math teachers that at yesterday's math committee, they're talking about teaching heterogeneous groups. We have approximately 7 or 8 teachers between the RLS and the high school, and Mrs. O'Connor, the new math specialist, registered for Joe Bowler's YouTube conference on teaching heterogeneous groups. In goal number 2, obviously that one's all about equity. You're well aware of our new transition program, which is up and running at the Boys and Girls Club. That's been a long goal of our school, to separate those 2 programs, to afford those students the services and the opportunities they need. And lastly, goal 3 and 4, and I'm going to tie those 2 together. The new social worker, Roxana, who's sitting here today in the multi-tiered system report, she has been really instrumental in pushing that agenda forward. I can't tell you how many meetings we've had already, but she's been really great to kind of wrestle with some of the challenges that we have as a secondary institution, to get things down on paper and work things through. She's been really helpful in her work with the counselors and myself and Mr. Fetters, and she's doing an amazing job. And that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Cinto.
Yeah.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, comments or questions?
I have just commentary as well. I think, Mr. Cinto, part of when I hear you speak about this, it feels so personal to you. And I just want to let you know that your sense of commitment to it and your sense of innovation for thinking outside the box is very apparent, at least speaking for myself. So I thank you for always doing that and soliciting voices of many to help inform your decisions and your actions. So it's apparent to me as I read the work, and I think it's great. I mean, these are all the things that our district is focusing on, wellness, for an equity, and these are fantastic. I was looking at the one thing about the youth voice, and I think that's we talked about that at the LCAP yesterday, right? That's the 2 high school seniors. Is that a position that you would select students, or would would you kind of hone in on some students to perhaps engage in that?
Well, I think we have our student right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Mazzy, Mr. Presswich, there you go. We're working, if you recall, we're working with Priya Nixon
right.
in the city. And as I talked earlier, when Dr. Wilson and I met with her, and we shared with her our process for selecting our school board rep. So I know Priya intends to go into Mr. Lowellsdorf's government classes to kind of share that because you want to get students who are interested and potentially follow that same selection process.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I guess, and it's probably an all-encompassing question, but I guess I think is like, what do you need from the board? Do you need something else from the board? Should something you want us to be thinking about in terms of, and I'm not putting you on the spot to answer right now, and that's something that we can certainly talk with Dr. Wilson about too, but, as we strive to, hit some of these goals, if there's something that you would think that the board should be thinking about, just, we're here to listen. So
no, I think that's one of the best parts about this district is we've always had the freedom to kind of tinker. We've never really had to massively overhaul things, and that's one of the beauties of being somewhere for so long. We continue to push the envelope. Again, would it have been nice to do all these things the first year? Of course. Right. But a lot of time it's kind of unnatural, and then to me, it's that little tinkering every year that I do with the staff or student leadership or whichever group that I'm working with that really pays homage to the past, the present, and where we're going in the future. And I think that's just how we continue to work, is continue to find areas where we can improve, because they're always going to be there. And working here in this district, whether it's the financial support, the the support among the administrative staff and the teachers, we always have that. We always feel that. So.
Great. Okay, great.
I'll go ahead and go. I just thank you for that presentation. It's good to see kind of, you know, the whole journey that you've taken and obviously the leadership that you've shown at your school. I think just as an observation, I mean, with the LCAP, it just seems that everyone from the top down is all on the same page. And I think that that makes a huge, not that it hasn't been there before, but just the fact that we're putting all this stuff on paper and now we're all kind of focused on it. I think that it makes, it's exciting that we're making these changes. And I also do want to give a shout out to the social worker that I haven't had a chance to sit with her or speak with her, but I know that that's going to be a huge difference for a lot of families. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Olguin.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, thank you. So I would like to, I've gone a little over my time period, but I just wanted that one more presentation in, and we will be taking a 10-minute break, coming back at 7:41.
did you see it? No, because nothing was open, like open, yeah, exactly. So, no, we got out just in the nick of time with that storm. It was actually the scariest ascension on a plane I've ever been in my life. It was just, I think we just had to fly through the storm. And Paul was like, we haven't grabbed a hurricane like that since our wedding. Because I was like, oh my God, we're going down. But it was great. Moving strength, moving, it was a lot of work. But we had great fun before. And so, oh yeah, she is. She moved into a new hip neighborhood, It's, everybody's like under the age of 25, it's like, and, super small apartment. She went from a good sized apartment to she's in a three bedroom. It's a true three bedroom, but one of the things that was so stressful was she was like, I want a bigger bed, so she bought like this queen size bed off of a friend and only used it for 6 months. Well, the bed didn't even fit in the bedroom. Suffice to say. So it was just a little bit of a stressful moment, and I was like, now we have to get rid of this bed, and we had already gotten rid of her twin size bed, but we got that back. It was just a comedy of errors. Needless to say, Mary, when that was done, I was like, I went to Paul and I said, I need food, beverages, and quiet. So, like, I don't care where, like, just get me to those places. And, and she's good. She said junior year's kicking her butt, though. She's like, so, here's the interesting thing that she said to me when we were having a conversation. She said that what she's finding is she's exhausted because before she would just get up and walk into her living room and do school. And now she's like, oh, I gotta get up earlier. I gotta get dressed. I gotta make sure I have my things with me. I gotta huff it on the subway, or I gotta huff it. And she's like, she's like, she goes, I'm out of practice. And she's like, it's not that I want to do it on serious. She goes, there was something so different about it that I'm just, it's made it.
Forrest, in a minute, you're gonna miss that.
Yeah, oh well. Change is hard.
How would you actually start moving?
Right.
Probably like the last week of the month. We're gonna move out on the 30th of this.
Like my phone started to chime, and I'm looking at it. It was like twice in a row, and it was her. And I was like, I can't talk. And she's like, I just am overwhelmed. And I'm like, I gotta call you later. I can't talk to you right now. Yeah. So I think it's just that whole feeling, everything I think is in person except for like a vocal class.
Do you want Mary to step back and follow? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm seeing that with our kids too.
Yes.
We are seeing that they're very.
And I will reassure her of that and just kind of. And she just said it's kicking. She's I said, that's a little out of practice. Yeah. And so you gotta talk to your, talk to the professors about that. What you're feeling, because I think this semester has a couple of academic classes added into it, to the theater training. The theater training classes are a little bit farther away. They were closer to her apartment last year. Or even freshman year when she would walk to them, or even they would have a couple of classes. So she's just, yeah, exactly. So,
And she just moved, so not only did she have school,
yes,
starting full time.
yeah, I know, and yes. And I said to her, moving is super stressful. And she's like, I know, I don't know how I would have done this if you guys didn't come out. And I said, I know, right? So it was, as much as I was not pleased about the whole queen bed not fitting situation that I had just paid for, that I had to turn around and sell, I was, I'm like, yeah, there's, it's not an easy thing to do. Yeah, we said we're gonna take care of exactly. But thank you for asking. I will. Thanks. Yeah, exactly. I will remind her of that. Yeah. finish it.
My last year one was great because I could just like put the pages in.
I said, Chris, I go, do you need a granola bar?
You probably have food under your desk. You have that bag of chips. I said, Erica, that was nice here. I'll look for an appetizer.
Somebody eat my chips.
Probably great.
Did you eat my chips?
No.
That's a little salsa right
Well,
there.
we did go to the other place and they only had 5 bags of chips for like 11.
I'm talking about the potato chips in my basket.
I'm not the name, I'm not a rat, but it was fun to have.
He was having a fit.
And I shared.
He didn't get enough chips?
He didn't get any. I mean,
Because I was late.
I believe you said this morning or yesterday you were.
I know, I was just hungry today. I know. Yeah. We're getting close.
Okay.
11D.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'd like to restart the meeting. Got an extra minute there of break. So we will move on to item 11D. This is a public hearing on the sufficiency of instructional materials in Williams Settlement instructional materials. And we'll adopt Resolution 21-9. I'd like to call on Mr. Heller.
This public hearing and associated resolution are in alignment with California Education Code 60119 and the Williams Act settlement to ensure that each pupil in the St. Helena Unified School District has been issued properly aligned curriculum to meet state standards. The attached documents are certifications of the curriculum distribution as reported by the library media specialists at each site and verified by the principal. Some of the curriculum you'll note provided to our primary and elementary students show the issuance of consumable materials that are also aligned with state standards. So that means once they're used, they're disposed of and renewed annually. So at this time, I would request that the board conduct the public hearing and approve the adoption of the resolution to certify the information provided is in alignment with the Williams Act.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? I'm sorry, I do have a different, I have a different procedure for this agenda. The public hearing for the sufficiency of instructional materials is now open at 7:44 p.m. Comments during this public hearing should be limited to the sufficiency of instructional materials. It is our goal to hear from all who wish to be heard. We now invite members of the audience to address the Board of Trustees. Again, we will be giving a full 60 seconds to this public hearing, and there will probably be a moment of silence if no one comes forward. This public hearing is now closed at 7:46 p.m. Do trustees have any questions about the sufficiency of instructional materials? It does say adopt resolution 21-9, but that's incorrect in the agenda. Is that correct? Dr. Wilson?
That's correct.
So we will be asking for adoption of resolution 21-9. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I just didn't have it in there. So, trustees, do I have a motion to adopt resolution 21-9?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Presentation on the California Healthy Kids Survey data. I'd like to call on Mrs. Mary Ellen.
Good evening again. It looks so much darker in front of me than it does on the screen, so I'm glad it looks lighter on the screen. So every year, I'm super excited to share about the California Healthy Kids Survey, and the reason I get excited about this and the data that's in here is because it's all student voice. Students answer approximately 50 to 60 questions every year on conditions of learning and school climate. So I'm excited that we get to see what the students are thinking. So normally this this survey is given in October. Last year it was given in February. So we're excited because the data is, we had been in session since November in person. So it's a little more, in my mind, reliable data because the kids have been in session. We're getting their opinions about school being in school. And so I really appreciate the information that we get out of this. So I'm going to go to page 4, and this has to do with the percentage of students surveyed. And if you can see, you're going to see in the elementary school, we survey grades 5, 7, 9, and 11. So 1 in elementary, 1 middle, and then 2 grades at the high school level. We had over 80%, if not higher, that were completing the survey. And to me, that's reliable data. You know, you do hear saying, oh, kids make fun of this, they don't answer it. You can't make fun of over 80% of, or make up the data when you have over 80% of the kids answering the questions. They're doing it online. There's no discussion. They're doing it in multiple classes at one time. So super exciting that we had that turnout. And then you can see that when it was given last year, we sent it out to every single student in the class, whether they were in person or hybrid, meaning at home. And then you can see our numbers right there. So some of the data that's coming out with this is that on the first slide, and I'm just going to briefly go through the slides because I think the main points are at the end, is that a caring relationship. So you can see in 7th grade, students are thinking and feeling that, yes, they do have caring relationships in the adults in their life. And this has to do with school adults in their life. And then you can see that we had a dip in 9th grade and we had a little bit of a dip in 11th grade. Next slide, and this is one of the slides or the data points that really, just one of a few that really kind of led the LCAP down the path that we need to do a better job with making sure that all means all and all of the voices are heard, because this has been a historical point for us, and you're just seeing last year, but predominantly our Anglo students feel connected to school at a higher rate than our Hispanic students, yet we have more Hispanic students in the district than we do Anglo students in the district. So it's just, there's something there. There's not any intentionality of anybody doing anything wrong, but to me it's called conditions of learning. It's just figuring out what is it in our system, what is it in our delivery, what is it that students are picking up that they don't feel like they're part of this school, in reference to having a voice, in reference to feeling bonded, appreciating the values of the school. So it is something that is highlighted in the LCAP over and over and over again, and it's one of our matrix that we look at in reference to measuring. Meaningful participation. This historically is always low because this particular category is where students say, do they have a say in the school rules? Do they have a say in the classroom and the activities and the engagement? And of course, as they get up in grades by 11th grade, they do, you have a little more of a third percentage that feel like they have a say in what's going on in the school site. But for the most part, this is always a lower area. And I think it's part of what we're trying to address is get the voice, get the engagement, hear what they're saying, understand, do they think that everything's fair or not fair? So this tells me that they're thinking that school rules aren't fair. They aren't applied evenly across the board. So again, it's just really paying attention to what the students are telling us, because it's not necessarily true or false, it's perception. And the perception is telling us that they don't feel like they have a say in some of these areas. And then I'm not going to go into this slide. You can read it yourself, alcohol use. But I do like the last 30 days, which means current use. And you can see that at the middle school level, it's barely any alcohol use within the last 30 days. And you can see it's from year to year to year to year. And then in 9th grade, you see a little bit of an uptick. And then 11th grade, you see actually that's been pretty even trend through all the years in reference to alcohol use within the last 30 days. Things we want to pay attention to, though. And then same thing for marijuana, lifetime, and then past 30 days. I'm super excited about what the 7th grade data is showing us. And then you see that we've gone down in 9th grade in reference to reports of marijuana use. And then the 11th grade is holding consistent. And then e-cigarettes, lifetime, and then last 30 days. And to be honest with you, I would have predicted this higher for 9th grade from last year to this year. From the last year to the year before, due to the pandemic, due to feeling stressed, due to a variety of situational conditions. And yet we see that it went down in 9th grade. 7th grade is barely there. And then we just only had a brief uptick in 11th grade. So excited about this data. It's not good data, but at least it's not a major change.
Can we just go to the one before and realize, because this is lifetime use, so those are not going to change overnight, because if you have something that's
Mm-hmm.
high in 9th grade, that's going to continue through to the 11th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so again, just going over the e-cigarettes, and you know that we had such an issue with e-cigarettes prior to the pandemic. And then mental health trends, this always concerns me. So these are students that seriously considered suicide in the past 12 months. And again, I did year after year after year. And looking at this, it roughly comes to about 46 kids that seriously considered suicide when we had taken this survey last year. And that's a concern. We shouldn't have one. And so that's why we do what we do with our therapists. That's why we have Roxana on board. All of it is to help our students and make sure that we don't have anybody go down this category. And then safety, this one has to do with the percent of students who feel safe at school, and we're high. And this again was last year, and students were feeling really good about being on campus and feeling safe on campus. And then this particular one is threats, and these are the students who did not feel or didn't have any threats of harm or injury at school. They didn't feel like they were threatened at all and didn't feel like there was going to be any harm to them. That's above 90% for all of our schools for the grades that were assessed in 7th, 9th, and 11th. That's great. That's fantastic news, especially when you're talking about bullying, harassment, in our resolution that we're having tonight. This counters the argument that we have a lot of bullying and harassing going on when you see that our percentages are above 90%, saying that they feel very safe and they don't feel a threat of harm. And then just, you can read the reflections, but, you know, as I was going through, I was actually talking about it. The main thing we're going to be focusing on is our school connections, school connectedness between our ethnicity, and then certainly focusing on meaningful participation. And I know Corinne's been doing a great job at the middle school level in getting more of the student voice. We're all trying to get the student voice. We just talked about it at the LCAP, to have more of those small group student voice. So it's a continual focus for us, is to make sure that there's no barriers that we're putting up for every single kid to have success in this district, academically, emotionally, and physically. And then I'm not going to go through all of those other things because you can read that, but we are going to continue to focus with our mental health and our wellness. That's a big focus. And as Dr. Wilson presented at the LCAP, wellness is the overarching filter that we'll be using this year on everything that we do. And I believe that concludes my report tonight.
Is there any public comment on the Healthy Kids survey? Trustees, comments and questions?
You know, I just want to say thank you for presenting this and showing this information. I know that we do this every year, and I'm very, except for last year. However, I'm very pleased that we do this Healthy Kids survey every year, because it really gives us a lot to think about, and it establishes the goals that we want for our district. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the students that took it as well.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate the reflections as well at the end, because, you know, those are the things that they weave right back into the LCAP and the wellness and all the priorities that we're trying to focus on. And I was quite pleased that you got as many responses as we did, given everything that has been going on. So as Trustee Kerr said, thank you to the students and the staff for seeing that those were done and for presenting to us tonight. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I just, I do also want to just echo what my fellow trustees said, and the really sad thing, I think we've mentioned this before, the thing that I know that we're paying a lot of attention to is those numbers of students who do feel suicidal, and I know that it's nothing that we can ever underestimate, and just I don't think we can ever say enough how many times that we do have resources for any parent or student or staff member who is out there. We have the resources, and please use them.
And just if I may tie onto that, is that it'll be coming out tomorrow from my office, Dr. Wilson approved, but the state is putting on a parent webinar in Spanish and English next week on suicide and signs to look for as a parent and what you can do. And then we're adding some local resources. So that'll be going out to the parents to sign up to watch that webinar. Either they can do a webinar or Facebook, but also there's the resources related to this topic.
That's great news. That's great news. Thank you for tying that in. To item 11F, we have the 2021-2022 SELPA local plan review. This is a written report. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, questions or comments? I would like to specifically recognize and thank Mr. Heller, who provided this report to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heller. And on to item 11G, written report on the 2021-2022 SHUSD professional development calendar. I'd like to again state that this is a written report. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, comments or questions?
I don't know.
I guess I'm assuming what happens after professional development is done for the year, kind of you assess what worked, what didn't, what needs to be returned in that respect. Because I mean that's quite a significant list that's there, and I think that's wonderful. But you know, I'm sure through trial and error, not everything necessarily comes back for a return showing the following school year. Am I correct?
That's a correct assessment, and we also have a professional development committee with a representative from each of the 4 sites that provides us feedback and provides input for us to consider for staff development days and such. So, you know, obviously our focus this year is on wellness, but you know, next year we begin, and probably in a few months, already starting to think about next year's staff development and opportunities that we can provide for our staff.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Heller, for that report. On to Human Resources, item 12A, consideration of adoption of Resolution 21-7, consent to teach 2021-2022. Again, I'd like to call on Mr. Christopher Heller.
Again, last month, the board approved 3 consents to teach for 3 other staff members, and we've determined that an additional staff member who has agreed to take on environmental science, our new science teacher, Bert Cotaspati, would need a consent to teach. He does have enough coursework and background in this area to be approved for a consent to teach, and I would ask that the board do that this evening.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Trustees, do you have any comments or questions?
I do not.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 21-7, consent to teach as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 21-7, consent to teach.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 12B, consideration of approval for the SHUSD substitute rates for the 2021-2022 school year. I'd like to call in Mr. Christopher Heller.
Yes, the governing board may be aware that across the state and the nation there is an incredible need for more teachers to fill vacancies. And during that time, while many districts are scrambling to find teachers to fill the vacancies, they're using substitute teachers, and thus creating a void in the number of substitute teachers that are available on a daily basis and for long-term assignments. We realize in Napa County we're going to need to remain competitive with our pool that we have to keep pace with trends in compensation that are occurring not only in Napa County but neighboring Solano and Sonoma County that might attract other substitute teachers. So we are proposing modest increases that keep pace with what we deem to be the going rate in those communities. And so that increases our daily sub rate from $175 to $200. A half-day sub would be $87.50 to $100. A long-term sub, we have several long-term subs that are providing spot coverage and providing some COVID assistance on campus, and that would increase to $210 a day from $200. And then a long-term sub, we have one in particular that is working in district that is grading, planning, assessing student work. We would want to increase their compensation to $250 a day. And I would ask if this is approved that we would be able to make this retroactive to this past Monday just for payroll purposes as we begin to process timesheets as they come in. So I would ask for the board to consider and approve this evening.
Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Trustees, any comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the substitute rates for 2021-2022 school year as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. On to item 13A, facilities. It is the September 2021 facilities update. That is a written report. I would like to remind everyone present this is a written report. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, any comments or questions?
I don't know. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Ms. Sandy Stubbs, Chief Business Official, for this preparation of this report. On to business operations, item 14A. Review and consider approval of the 2020-2021 unaudited actuals report. I'd like to call on Mrs. Sandy Stubbs.
Thank you. This is the district's final budget report for 2020-21 until the audit is presented in December.
Ms. Stubbs, can you turn on your microphone, please?
Apologies.
Thank you.
This is the district's last financial report for 2020-21 until the audit is presented in December. And I'm pleased to report that our auditors are anticipating that we will not have any material findings, meaning any changes to the numbers for 2021, which I'm pleased about, especially because it was a particularly challenging audit year due to all the additional COVID resources that we received in trying to navigate all those with the different changes. And so I like to try and provide the board with kind of a special focus within each of my financial reports. I've done that for the last few reports. And tonight I'd like to talk about the difference between unrestricted funds and restricted funds, and then showcase the numbers that are related to the unrestricted funds in the actual unaudited actual report financial information. So we receive two types of funds in our general fund. The first is unrestricted, and this includes our property tax revenue and some additional state aid and unrestricted state lottery funds. And these funds are very flexible and available for any type of use within the education code. We also receive restricted funds, and these come from state and federal resources and also some local resources. And they are much less flexible in nature, and we can only use those for very specific purposes, and those purposes are outlined when you get the grant. And then together, these sources of funding make up the total general fund, and our property tax revenue probably makes up about 83% of our total unrestricted and restricted revenue. And we talked a little bit about restricted funds. A good example of a restricted account would be a $21,000 grant that we receive for our ag program at the high school. And so each year we budget that $21,000 or whatever the annual change to that amount is. And then we budget the expenditures, and that particular funding balances itself, so to speak. We can't overspend it. We're limited to that $21,000. And so we CBOs have a saying that the restricted side of the house takes care of itself, in the sense that you only spend the dollars that you're allowed to, and you try and spend restricted funds in the same year. Unrestricted funds, however, can be used for any purpose, really. And so this is where we maintain our reserve and where we charge administrative expenses, costs for most of our personnel, and so forth. And so this is just our unrestricted general fund, and it's how we concluded the 2020-21 fiscal year. And so we began with a beginning balance of about $9 million. We received over $35,000 in revenues, had about 35 It's been a long day. Almost $36 million in revenue, and then approximately $28 million in expenditures. And then we also transferred out over $5 million by way of contributions to special education and food services, and then transfers to our other funds. And then the board also approved a $1 million transfer during the last board meeting to Fund 17, our reserve for capital outlay. And so that resulted in an overall increase to the general fund of $2 million. And so we have a positive ending fund balance. A portion of that is non-spendable or restricted or assigned or as part of our required 3% reserve, leaving us with that unassigned, appropriated amount of over $6 million. And so I always like to share with the board the difference between the current reporting period and then what you saw most recently. And so in this case, we're comparing the estimated actuals that the board saw during the June budget adoption for 21-22 with the final closing of the books concluded in September. So we're looking at the difference from May to September. And I always analyze the budget all year long, and then I reduce our expenditure budgets or increase or adjust our revenue budgets as needed as we learn more information, as we see how we're spending money. And so with revenue, for example, we see a decrease of about $106,000 in our LCFF sources, and that's mainly our property tax revenue. And that was because we received our final, what we call the J29 annual certification report in August that gave us our final amounts for our property taxes. And then the other adjustments that you see to revenue there, we had the California Department of Education updates their allocation estimates for the year a couple of times during the year. And so when we were closing the books, we looked at the state website again and then saw that they'd adjusted the projected revenue, so we made those transfers in the budget. And then with local revenue, we always budget interest and donations and so forth as we receive them. And so you typically see local revenue increase throughout the year. With regard to expenditures, I always try to budget tightly, and we always want to conclude the year being under budget. We never want to be conclude the year being over budget, because that indicates an issue with how you're managing your funds. And usually by the end of the year, I'm starting to adjust the budgets, and so you might see less of a difference between estimated actuals and unaudited actuals. However, with this past year, with all the challenges resulting from the pandemic, there was more uncertainty, and so we didn't want to reduce certain budgets too soon. So that's why you see some slightly bigger end-of-the-year adjustments than compared with past years. And so for certificate and classified salaries, for example, we have, at the end of the year, we concluded under budget, which was good, and those were mainly the changes to supplemental pay accounts, for example, substitute costs and extra duty and so forth. We also had a placeholder in our classified salary budgets for a maintenance position that was not filled. And then with employee benefits, we also changed financial systems from a system called Digital Schools to Escape during this past year. And when we were in Escape, we used to pay for our July medical payments with a big payment in June. But with the change to Escape, the payments were pulled out, the July medical payments were pulled out a little bit each month. But we still had that placeholder in there, so that's why you see the $250,000. So we'll now make that adjustment in the 21-22 budget, which you'll see at the first interim in December. And then with employee benefits, of course, with statutory benefits, those are always, that's a percentage of salaries, and so if we spent less than we budgeted in salaries, then of course our statutory costs will go down too, which would be that $135,000 that you see there. And then we had a couple of other adjustments. We shifted about $25,000 to some restricted resources, and then we had a placeholder for benefits for that maintenance position that we talked about. With regard to supplies and services and so forth, we see some similar activity here. We budget about $275,000 for textbooks each year. And I remember the year prior in 1920, I think we actually went a tiny bit over, and I think we spent about $279,000 in textbooks. This year we went under by about $149,000, and that just has to do with the timing of when we're making purchases and what adoption cycle we're on and those kinds of things. And then our supply budgets on the unrestricted side of the house came in about $166,000 less, and equipment about $33,000 less. And with the supplies too, we were able to assign quite a few things, for example, HVAC filters and things like that over to COVID dollars, and so that's part of what goes into that number there. With services and operating, you can see some of the differences that make up where we thought we were back in May compared with where we are in September. So travel and conferences were quite a bit less, about $58,000. Professional development, field trips, and those were some key areas where I left our usual budget in place for the year because we weren't certain, you know, if we would be able to return to doing some of those activities. So we just left a lot of those placeholders in there for this year. And then transportation wound up costing less than budgeted, and then the net of other changes in services and operating was about $74,000. And then we did move some capital outlay expenses, equipment and so forth, over to our routine restricted maintenance account, and that's on the restricted side of the house. So again, I would anticipate this time next year we'll see a little bit less of a change compared with estimated actuals to actuals as we begin to stabilize and expenditures become a little bit more predictable again. Then finally, with we've got a couple other categories with other outgo. You can see there is $41,734 there, and so that was an increase because we just had the placeholder for that budget up in the services and operating expenses. And so that's why we see an increase there and then a decrease in the other category that you just looked at. And then with transfers out, the board did approve that transfer of $1 million from the general fund to Fund 17, and that is to bolster our special reserve account. And then our cafeteria fund, I'm pleased to say, we were able to reduce the contribution by about $205,000. And that was because we had a major increase in revenue because of those federal and state waivers that we've had all this past year. So that was really good news. And this is a reimbursement program, so it was challenging to kind of gauge just how much additional revenue we'd be receiving. So, but now I'll be able to look at the 21-22 budget, and now that we know that those waivers have been continued, we'll be able to probably reduce the budget for the contribution with the first interim report, which is good. And then there were just some adjustments as we concluded the year to our contributions to routine restricted maintenance and special education. So the overall percent change in terms of expenditures was relatively small at about 2.61%. So next, the County Office of Education will review and hopefully approve our 2021 unaudited actuals report, and then they will submit that to the state. And then, of course, we'll use this information to continue to inform our 21-22 budget, and then begin to inform the development of the 22-23 budget. And so with that, I would ask if the board had any questions, and also ask that you consider approving the 2020-21 unaudited actuals report.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, comments or questions?
This was a really super helpful report. The format was great. I was like starting to feel like, wow, like this is like she did it again, you know, kind of thing. So, and it is interesting. I mean, this is just more commentary for discussion. It is interesting when the percentage change seems so small for expenditures at 2.61, but when you look at the dollars, it seems huge. So I guess, do you, obviously you're saying, you always are on the conservative side. I know when you do your budgets. Is there, do we foresee like the cafeteria contribution, for example, probably going back up to where it needed to go? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball as well, obviously, but I'm wondering if something like that, we're going to have to anticipate funding again, contributing to, I should say.
Well, that's a very good question. We still do have to make a contribution this year to food
Right.
services. However, we're beginning to hear that the state of California may be continuing to provide,
Okay.
Reduced or free meals for students longer term or ongoing, and so that's very encouraging. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Or just thank you for kind of breaking this down again. It's always helpful to get a review of some of the terms that, well, Jeannie's probably familiar with this. She was probably bored, but for the rest of us, because she's got that background, but for us, I mean, it's just helpful to be reminded and kind of relearn it again.
And if we just look at it, I mean, it just represents an awful lot of work for you, Andy, and your team, and we always want to say thank you. And the fact that we always have almost no findings year after year during our audits, it just speaks a lot to the professionalism of you and your team. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Is there anyone who would like, is there a motion to approve the 2020-2021 unaudited actuals report as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. 14B, review and consideration of approval for a one-year funding plan for the school resource officer position. That would be the SRO position. I would like to call on Miss Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And in a little bit, I'll ask Mr. Cinto and Miss Allen and Miss Cox to come up to the podium. Thank you. Earlier this evening, the board discussed the importance of student mental health and well-being during the presentation on the California Healthy Kids Survey data. And one of the ways in which we have been supporting students over the past 2 years is through the presence of a full-time school resource officer that has been funded through a Proposition 56 tobacco grant, which was awarded to the city of St. Helena. And the city was not awarded a renewal of the grant for this year, and at this time, I would like to ask the board to consider partially funding the position for 2021-22 using some unspent Kaiser grant dollars. And before we have our my colleagues speak there, I'd like to review some of the funding plan detail with the board. And so this plan here describes the idea of a 75-25 split, whereby the school district would pay for 75% of the estimated costs for the year, for the actual costs this year, which are estimated at $105,000, and the city would pay for the remaining balance of about 35% of the costs. And the way that I'm proposing doing this would be using some of the unspent Kaiser grant funding, and the board may recall that we received a one-time Kaiser grant back in 2017-18 as a way for them to mitigate the loss of property tax revenue to the district due to assessment waivers that the hospital was granted. And so at the time, the board approved using these funds to support our student wellness efforts and our field trips. And so you can see kind of the 5-year plan that the board had approved there, and you can see the actual expenditures from 2017-18 through 2020-21. And then we can still, even if we assign some of these unspent funds to the resource officer in 2021-22, and you can see the $105,000 highlighted there in yellow, we still have enough to continue our 5-year plan through 22-23, and then even a little bit beyond in 23-24 with regard to continuing to support student wellness and our field trips. And the reason that we have some unspent funds with the Kaiser grant is primarily due to the pandemic and just not spending some of the money that we intended to. And so this would then grant us full-time SRO services through the remainder of the school year. And with that, I would ask for Mr. Cinto to come up and share his thoughts about this position.
Yeah, thank you. As much as I know the terms of this grant are written for tobacco prevention and those kind of things, I just have to applaud Officer Melissa Brown for how she's integrated herself beyond the scope of the grant. Even today, we had a fire drill, and she was Johnny on the spot, willing to help out where we needed her. She checked buildings and saw which doors are unlocked, and she serves as an access mentor to kids who are ineligible, guiding them and providing them support as they work to become eligible. But she's become integral to the school site. I received a picture of her and Mr. Fetters at the football game the other day, and this is on her own accord, not in uniform at the time, but she sees her role at the school far beyond what a traditional school resource officer is, and she's great to have around.
I'd just like to second what Mr. Cinto had to say. Officer Brown has been an invaluable resource at RLS. She was helping us with home visits. She is proactive. She works really well with students and families and staff. She's prevented difficult situations from escalating. And I know that in the past year or so, the term SRO has not been viewed favorably in many communities, and I want to say that in this community, Officer Brown has made that term one of that's appreciated and respected instead of one that makes people cringe. So she's been a really good addition to our school district. And ditto to what Ben and Corinne were stating. I'm adding another element to it is that Officer Brown tends to act more like a social worker than she does a police officer. And she definitely has worked on the relationship of the police department within the school system favorably. The kids see her as an asset. The kids do not see fear. They seek her out. She's very easy to talk to. In my role, she's the alternative to suspension at the high school and middle school level for our students that were caught with substance abuse. She's the one that provides the after-school information meeting for the parents and the students that they have to attend when they're caught with possession or in use. And she went through all of the training with Stanford on that, and she's just a reliable person who delivers that message with passion and really tries to steer the kids in the other direction. It's not punitive at all. She also is a person last year that I relied on heavily in reference to re-engagement. If we didn't have students that wouldn't come to school, or we had students that were just disconnected online when we were fully online, she would do a home visit. She'd go out and do the home visit. We would tell her which students we needed to have somebody do a wellness check on, and she would go do the wellness check. She's just an integral part of the school district, and it feels like she's been here for years. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, and I did want to mention that the city is attempting to appeal not being awarded the grant, and so if they are granted that appeal, and then any costs that the district spent would potentially be retroactively reimbursed if the grant went back to cover those expenses. And so with that, I would ask if the board had any questions and to consider approval of the funding plan for the SRO position.
Thank you for sharing all that. I had a question. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Julio, I have to interrupt you. We're going to do public comment first.
Good evening. I'm Mark Prestwich. I'm the St. Helena City Manager. Thank you for your consideration of this item tonight. I want to acknowledge the partnership between the school district and the city for the past 2 years related to this position. We have city representatives that meet regularly with school district representatives, and I think this partnership is an example of the good work that comes from those discussions. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Patswich. Is there anyone else who wishes to publicly comment? Trustees, comments or questions? Go ahead, Julio.
Yeah, thank you again for sharing. Everyone spoke so highly of her. I was wondering, will there ever be an opportunity for her to come either present and just highlight some of the work that she does in person or in the future? I mean, not at any time, but just so that we can really see what the work that she's doing and she can.
Absolutely. We just felt that as you were potentially approving
Yeah.
money tonight, it wouldn't be
right.
appropriate for her to be
Yeah,
here.
in the future, I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
And I just wanted clarification for people who may be watching this or watch at a later date. She's part of our school district 5 days a week, correct? All through, it's 5 days a week. It's through the school hours, correct? Okay, just so that people are aware of that. That's what the position is. And then in looking at this, just the accounting summary that you provided, Andy, it looks like, so then regardless, that money would sunset for the Yosemite and outdoor education after year 2023, regardless.
Correct, and so we'll be then looking at some other funding possibilities to continue those
Okay,
activities on.
great. Okay, thank you.
And Trustee Pelosi, just to clarify, in the years past, she was working 410s, which included every other Friday.
Okay.
And my understanding is that once this contract is potentially approved, she will be going back to that 410 schedule.
Okay, great.
And as much as it is a 410 schedule, as Mr. Cinto mentioned, she does appear at all times when needed.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to highlight that I don't know what the correlation is in actuality, but we have seen a surprising decrease in e-cigarette use, and this is a tobacco grant, and I don't know if that would help in your petition for review, but we do have data to show that it's something that we're doing at the district and something that she's involved in has worked for the e-cigarette use in a period when you would expect it to increase exponentially during what we went through in the last year and a half. So, but I really I also want to use this opportunity to say thank you because I just remember seeing her every day out there helping the food service staff set up in those first months of COVID when we didn't know what was going on. She was always visible, and I think that is something that really helped our school district in that initial period of no one really knowing what was going to happen, what the future was going to be. Her presence every day at the food service delivery for our students was commendable. So do I have a motion?
Yeah, I just,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just
Go
quickly,
ahead.
but the motion will be very, after this one, you'll know what. So I'm actually very much in favor of a school resource officer. I always have been. I don't have any feeling of, we shouldn't do this by any means. And a lot of that is just because it's always wonderful to have another caring adult at the campuses. And that, as we've just heard, is exactly what we have here. And it's, and in addition to that, it actually is, it also is just a really great relationship that we have with the city of St. Helena too. And this really kind of rounds everything out as far as us being in a partnership with every kind of entity here in St. Helena. So I appreciate the relationship with the city. So thank you very much for that, everyone.
So is there a motion to approve the one-year funding plan for the school resource officer position as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. So next we have 14C, review and consideration of approval of contracts over $25,000 for September 2021. I'd like to call on Miss Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And we just have one contract for the board to consider this evening, over $25,000, and this would be the contract between the district and the city of St. Helena for the SRO funding plan. And so the information that you see here provides some of the descriptors that we talked about in the previous item. And again, just as a reminder, the contract would be void if the city is successful in its appeal to receive the grant with retroactive, anything that we've spent would be refunded to the district if the grant is in fact retroactive.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Trustees, comments or questions? No. Is there a motion to approve the contracts over $25,000 as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the contracts over $25,000 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. On to item 15A, future agenda items. Next meeting, we will be hearing from Julio, reporting from St. Helena Elementary School. We will have a student board member presentation, written report on student discipline, preschool for all annual report also being given by Julio. We have the ELL master plan report on residency audit, district of choice report on the transition program. That's going to be our first 60 days of the new transition program. Looking forward to that. RLS will be reporting on its equity measures being taken. There's the actuarial study, board policy updates, Red Ribbon Week, and we will either have an appointment of a new board member or we will have an election resolution. So that will be for the board member vacancy. Are there any suggested additional board agenda items?
President Haug, I was, and then this is something that's certainly not urgent by any means, but I would like the board to consider a review of our board monthly salary. And I'm thinking this because right now we're actually going to be getting a new board member, and it would be nice just to review kind of what other districts are doing as far as their salaries, their monthly salaries. It was brought to my attention just recently that districts do increases to the board monthly. And it's not anything that, like I said, it's not urgent by any means. And I would be since it's a board-related item, I would be more than happy to do the legwork and just calling districts to kind of see what everyone does as far as the trustees' salary.
So are other board members interested in exploring the possibility of, and we actually don't get a salary, we get a stipend.
Oh, a stipend,
Yeah,
excuse me.
because it's not.
And the thing is, I do want to say out to the public that with these increases, it's like 1%, 2% a year. It's not very much at all. And from my understanding, and please, if this is not correct, it's based on ADA. So that's, our stipend is based on ADA. So it's not going to change that much by any means.
That's correct.
President Haug, just by matter of protocol, Trustee Kerr, have you spoken with another board member about this, and are they in agreement with you?
I have. And they were in agreement, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so there's at least 3 board members that would be interested in seeing this on a future agenda item?
I would approve seeing that on an agenda item.
Okay.
It's a bit late, but yes, I would.
Thank you, Forrest. Along with future, are there any other requests for future agenda items? Okay. Before I adjourn, I would just like to thank Forrest once again. we all say thank you to you, and I'd just like to give a little round of applause for Forrest. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight? And I'd like to give Forrest the opportunity for his last motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.